Welcome to Boring Conversation, a Malifaux podcast.
Hey there, everybody. We're back. Today, I'm joined by Maeve Fox. Maeve, say hello to the folks.
Hello.
So, we're here to talk a little bit about Bayou and the new title cards. But before we do that, I got to get a couple of things out of the way right off the bat. So, first, it's been a little while since we've recorded. Myself, Maeve, Adam, and Jake have all had quite a lot of things come up in our personal lives that have made things a little tricky. But we have a recording on the docket tonight. We're hoping to record another one potentially even this weekend. And then I also have a quick little interstitial episode with some teases about the event that we've talked about in the last couple of episodes. I got some really great details to share on that. So keep an eye on your podcast feed, and you might be treated to actually 2 episodes this weekend. So that said, that's talking about the future. What are we talking about tonight? So Maeve, why don't you tell all the good people what's on the docket?
All right. So I'm officially calling this the State of the Bayou Address. With the titles coming out, with all of the new stuff coming out, I felt like it would be really cool if we just kind of took a look at like what Bayou as a faction looks like in the aftermath of all of these titles coming out. So I talked to Jesse, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to discuss like which titles really change things, which titles are going to just help supplement, and like how playing the faction as a whole. I guess we're kind of looking at it more from a competitive level. Like, obviously, in games, you can play whatever you want, but we're just kind of looking at a competitive level. Like, what do we think our picks are going to be? Probably going to be some hot takes in this, but I feel like Jesse and I have both played a pretty good amount of these titles to have a decently informed opinion on how things are going to go.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, to your point, most of what we're saying tonight, I would encourage everybody to please take with a grain of salt. And I'm sure that that's fairly obvious, being that these are all very new masters with very new play styles, and some of them are fairly complicated. So they're going to take more than a game or two to really get nailed down. Who knows where these titles are going to take us in 6 months' time? There is so much new content that came out with this book release that, quite frankly, by this time next year at Next Gen Con, people are probably still going to be figuring out how some of these titles really fit into the factions. Who's to say? I mean, the last 2 major releases that we saw, well, the last 3 major releases that we saw from Weird have been expansive. I mean, the first new release we saw with 3rd edition, they very ambitiously put out new rules for every model in the game at the same time, obviously with quite a bit of playtesting behind it. But, by the time the next major release of the Explorer Society rolled out, people were still figuring out how to use some of those initial masters. So at this point, Explorers have been out for a year. We've moved into Malifaux Burns, and we've got another huge boatload of content that's dropped. Weird's doing a great job at giving us tons of toys to play with. It's a complicated game with a lot of ins and outs, and I'm really excited to see where these new master titles and the originals stand a year from now. But we're not talking about a year from now, are we?
Nope.
We're talking about right now. That's right. So this episode, like I said, is going to have a lot of hot takes. I'm probably going to be wrong about plenty of stuff, and I'm sure May feels the same way. But before we get to talking about some of these models, importantly, what are we drinking tonight? So, Maeve, why don't you tell me what you got?
I have a very nice bottle of Guinness Draft Stout. It's pretty much my go-to for just when I want to have a nice little beer.
We should start taking a pool. Not telling you, of course, what we're guessing, but try and figure out how long it's going to be before you don't pick a Guinness for a recording session. Play like Price is Right style, like how close can you get without going over, sort of thing.
I I got to tell you that I am excited about Captain Con and the
Yeah.
content creator invitational, and I'm really excited to actually get to hang out with you and get to experience some of your beer snobbery and hopefully like pick up some like
Oh
good
boy.
tips. I'm
Oh
assuming
boy.
you're gonna be exposing me to some good content when it comes to beer. Can't
Oh
wait.
yeah. Yeah. Rhode Island's a great beer state. It'll be good times. So I myself tonight have a Sam Smith's organic cider. It's a British style hard cider. British style meaning it's made with apples that are more commonly found in the United Kingdom. Uh, British ciders usually are going to be same thing with French ciders and basically anything from Europe are often going to be a little more complex than your standard like woodchuck style hard ciders here in the United States. There's a lot of craft cideries on the market these days that do a great job at making more complex and nuanced ciders. The way that you would do that is by using a blend of apples that's tailored specifically to fermentation rather than like sweet cider that you drink from like a cider mill. Um, the British ciders like this one I'm drinking tonight usually have a unique British cider yeast as well that are going to give them a little bit more character. This particular one is one of the best ciders out there. I mean, I mean, you can't see it because we're not recording video right now, but it is absolutely brilliantly clear. I mean, it's like no haze, no fog, no nothing. Um, Nice carbonation, nice complex flavor, some tannins, some acids to balance it. It's good stuff. So,
So
cheers.
side story that I think you will appreciate. I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina, and we had apple trees in our backyard, and occasionally the deer would come in and eat the apples on the ground. You'd see them stumble a little bit. Well, one particular evening, a good size black bear bull got into the apples and got himself very inebriated, crashed into the shed where we had our lawnmower, and slept it off for 2 days. For 2 days, this bear lived in our shed, and I mean, we couldn't just get him out. I mean, he was huge, and you
He's a
don't,
freaking bear.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, apples are not just for humans. Fermented apples are not just for humans. Deer and bears absolutely love to get drunk on apples.
Yes, definitely. That's a good story. All right, so let's get to talking about some of these masters. So the first segment that we're talking about is rather than going through every single one of them, which we're certainly going to offer hot takes on all of the Bayou Masters, but let's just talk about what we're the most excited to bring to tournaments. So, Maeve, this was your idea, so why don't you kick us off?
All right, so the first one, you guys all know, I'm so excited for Sommer. Loot Sommer, or as we call him, Sommer divorced, because the picture looks like he's dragging his things out of the house, so he got kicked out. um, I think he's just an interesting take because like I the whole keyword is so balanced around summoning that I thought it was a really interesting way that they made him viable. Like he still has summoning and still summon bio gremlins, which is great. But you still get the evidence that this is Sommer. This is the big leader. He's running around this raiding group, and I think it's going to be really neat because if you're used to playing against Sommer one, there's going to be some tech here that you don't expect. So there's going to be a few months of like, oh wait, that does what? And it'll be interesting to see like when people start wondering, well, is he going to take summoning Sommer? Are they going to take Sommer two? What's going to come in? So he's one of my top picks for like very interesting changes for Masters.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I Summer is probably the one Bayou Master that before he got adjusted I had played him a few times, but I never really committed the number of games to learning his crew that it would take. I mean, that's one thing that we've talked about here on the podcast. Some other people have talked about that. Summer One was a very complex master. Took a lot of reps to really get him nailed down. You know, Lootmonger Summer is also pretty complicated, but I think it's a little bit more manageable. I do think that he's probably a better experience to play against as well, because there's not quite as much like unresistible stuff, chain gun shooting, across the table, with a bazillion Georgian Olaf shots, which got toned down a bit, but still. So I
Yeah.
feel like he's going to be more fun to play because he's a little bit more resilient, and he's a little bit less prone to being disrupted.
Yep.
He's also not going to be quite as oppressive to play against while bringing a lot of really cool tech to the table. So
He's definitely not attrition. He's not as attrition based. So I think
mm-mm.
that's a big deal. Um, I really think Gremlin Raid is a great ability. It still gives you those out of activation shots, and you can pair it with the giving model slow to get positives, so you can still ping your summon Bayou Gremlins to do really interesting and cool things. And really, up until this point, Bayou didn't do a whole lot of neat things with ski markers and interact actions. So this is kind of a new ground for Bayou to really like focus on a different style of play. Plus, we have
Yeah, for
Soulstorm
sure.
generation. Thank God.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, I mean, this is a complex master, and we could spend an entire episode just talking about him and all the interactions between him and his crew. But for the folks that aren't super familiar with him, can you just give like a Cliff Notes version of how this summer works and how it differs from original summer?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, what he does is he got rid of his big shotgun to throw junk at people. So he's got a 10-inch shot that actually can either give out staggered or slow or drop a ski marker. Um, Whenever a model within 10, whenever an enemy model cheats within 10 of him, he can just drop a ski marker next to them, which is really good. It reminds me a lot of Parker. And actually, there's a lot of similarities, I think, to Parker 1 in the Sommerteeth kit. And then when a friendly big hat model removes a marker, you can summon a Bayou Gremlin. So that's his only way of summoning. So you're really trying to manipulate markers by dropping markers, then bringing them back out. You can give a big hat model slow to get a positive to one of your attacks. So it's still very keyword synergistic. But what he's really doing is like playing around with those scheme markers to I think it gives him more manipulation and like detonate charges and spread them out and all of those scheme marker crews that I don't think that Sommer One really handles very well.
Yeah, and like with this version where he does have the potential to summon quite a lot of Bayou Gremlins with minimal AP investment or low value AP investment from other big hat models without having to use his own AP to do the summoning. And then also giving you a way to use those Bayou Gremlins or any big hat model, but mostly the Bayou Gremlins as a resource to get plus flips on key attacks, I think is a really cool mechanic, and it's not something that I would have thought of at
No,
all. It's
absolutely.
pretty unique. I mean, there's really nothing else in the game, to my
No.
knowledge, that does that. Yeah.
No, he's very cool. And then he gets the White Rabbit, which I think is a fantastic addition to the keyword as well. Give us a little bit of survivability, turn a model into a mobile scheme marker. Um, I really like that. I really like that card too. I think you'll see a lot of play in Sommer One as well. So that's my pick
Cool.
for probably the thing I'm the most excited about coming into the titles. What about you?
So I would say, I mean, this is no surprise. I mean, just based on our coverage of Brewmaster, I would say that I am far and away looking forward to bringing Brewmaster Moonshiner to the table, from both a casual and competitive standpoint. So yeah, I mean, for the purposes of this episode, rather than talking about Brewmaster all over again, I'm going to go down to my second choice pick, which I mean, probably to nobody's surprise, is Ophelia Overloaded. Um, she just totally changes the place. Well, not totally. She drastically changes the play style of the kin keyword. Um, Essentially, just from a high level perspective, what Ophelia does for the kin keyword now is rather than being a damage dealer herself, which she can still deal a little bit of damage, but not nearly as much as she used to, she enables the rest of the keyword by letting them use her upgrade guns rather than just putting them on herself. The big deal there is that it gives access to a bunch of stat 7, because the bigger they are, shooting attacks to all the other models in the keyword, and spreads out her versatility across all those models. One of the things with original Ophelia is that, like, she had these 5 arsenal upgrades, which are great, but you usually only ended up using them if you hit the mask trigger on her gun. Like, there were some circumstances where you would use the arsenal upgrades as their own, for their own attacks, but it was not super common. And you usually just ended up using them for that mask trigger, or you used them for damage reduction. So now, because you can discard one of the upgrades to reduce the damage, just in case you're not aware. So now she can hand out all these different attack actions to all these other models in her keyword to add a bunch of versatility, and variety of actions, which is something that Kin sort of lacked in. They're very one dimensional. They're kind of point and shoot, kill your enemy, move up, score your points later. So she gives a variety of different attack actions that accomplish different things to her whole crew. She gives a little bit of damage reduction to her whole crew because they can all discard the upgrades to reduce damage. And then she's got this really, really cool bonus action where up to 3 friendly kin models in line of sight can discard an attached arsenal upgrade to resolve any one of the following effects, which you get to choose. They're not suit based. So you can summon a young LaCroix next to a model. You can drop a scheme marker. You can draw a card, or you can heal that friendly kin too. So just having that amount of choice of what effect you want to come into play over potentially 3 models every turn really adds a lot of flexibility that, again, the keyword was really lacking. I don't necessarily know that she's better over, like, across the board than original Ophelia, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. She's just great. I mean, she can hand out staggered, she can hand out stunned, she can hand out can she hand out distracted? Yes, she can hand out distracted. Very, very different, very cool. I'm really looking forward to it.
And the addition of Sly is a big deal too. False claim into the faction. Once again, we get some scheme marker manipulation. He's fast. He has that built-in, or not built-in, but he has that trigger on his false claim that allows him to kind of do a impromptu secret passage, which can have a little bit of issue with movement. So that gives you, a way to do some better spread out schemes. So I think he is a big, big deal for the faction. I hate that he is guild and not Bayou, but that's fine. That's fine.
We were talking in the Bayou Messenger chat too, and I can't recall who came up with the idea. If it was, it might have been me, it might have been somebody else. I have no idea. But one kind of janky thing that you could do with Sly in Ophelia 1 is you can set them up so that you've got 2 models in the crew with 12 cups of coffee, so that they get the mark territory bonus action to pick up scheme markers and gain focus. And he's a big base, so you can throw a false claim on one side of him, and then you can throw a false claim on the other side of him for his activation to get out 4 scheme markers. And then both those models can activate, use their bonus to get focus too.
That seems pretty good.
I don't think it's good, but it sure is funny.
If it gets you 2 focus shots into the enemy on turn 1, turn 2, that's pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, 2 focus on Ophelia and 2 focus on Raphael turn 1. I'm okay with that.
Long as you don't want to go anywhere, right? Like, as long as you're not interested in going anywhere, it's fine.
Exactly. Sly is kind of stuck back there for turns 1 and 2 at that point, but yeah. So, were there any other masters that you were really interested to bring to the competitive table, Maeve?
Oh, yes, the piggies. I love Ulix too. I've played him. I've played him several times since they dropped the card, and I played him in beta quite a bit. And he's just this version is just fun. I mean, like he's aggressive. He's up in your face. He's doing the things that pigs want to do. That bow is just brutal. A 2-4-5 with a positive flip on every attack is just devastating. Plus, it's forcing them to discard, which means that you're kind of like leveraging your own lack of card draw into like their resource management as well. Um, he's still Ulix. He still has some heavy TNs, or the crew does at least. There's still not a lot of card draw. It's still, like you have the same problems, but I think with this one, you have much more when the when the deck works in your favor, when the flips work in your favor, he's just devastating. And it's a lot of fun to just like throw him into the enemy crew with a couple war pigs and go, yeah, good luck.
Yeah, I mean, I look at his card, and he's not as punishing by any means as this other master I'm about to mention, but he's like he's like the Bayou Nekama now.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
he's fast, he stampedes on you and hands out burning. He's got a 3-4-6 attack with shove aside, like heals galore. The replace mechanic, it's yeah. I mean, he's yeah, Bayou
Yep.
Nekama.
And like all of the inner synergies of the crew work really well together. Um, the unfortunate thing is I still think that like Hog Whispers are kind of hard to play because they get left behind by this how blisteringly fast this crew is. Um, and I guess our honorable mention for like favorite things to play with because it's not actually a master, and I know you feel the same way. Bo Peep has been in every list I've played for the past like 2 months. She is
Yeah,
so good.
yeah. We're gonna talk about the jockeys
Yeah,
towards the close of this episode, but yeah,
yeah.
she's amazing,
And
and she's not
she's
the only one that I think's amazing.
Yeah, and she's so good in Ulix. Like she's such a boon for that crew to be like. It's incredibly easy to get old major Ulix and a piglet who turns into a war pig into your opponent's crew turn one.
hmm So this is not something that we had planned necessarily to talk about, but I know it's going to happen. So let's just rip off the band-aid. So we talked about the masters that we're the most excited to bring to the competitive table. What do you think the ones you're the least excited about are?
I changed my opinion a little bit, surprisingly. I was really down on Zip when I first looked at him. Um, I'm still not like he's still not high on my list of titles that I think are like. But I have seen situations where he works, and I played a game against Brian from Schemes and Stones where he played Outcast Zip 1, I played Bayou Zip 2, and in that matchup in particular, the fact that Zip and Maris could not pick him up and throw him with Up We Go gave the benefit to Zip 2, and he was like he might hold neck and neck with Ophelia as being the tankiest master that we have. Like that captain's trigger plus the distracted makes him very hard and very annoying to take down, which is not. I mean, Zip One doesn't do that, so I think I'm not saying he's gonna terrorize tables or anything like that, but I think he's better than my initial like read on him was.
So I'd say uh, I'm going to reserve judgment on Zip 2 for the time being. I was initially really low on him, and you and I had some lengthy discussions about our concerns with him. I'm going to say the one that I'm the least excited about, and I'm really sad to say this because I've been rooting for this keyword for a while, but it's got to be Wong the Enchanter. And I know a lot of people are real high on him. I'm still not seeing it. I'm still not seeing it. So I do like that that you have a little bit more power to deal damage, to do the things that you need to do. He doesn't suffer so much at the whims of fate as OG Wong does. I still don't feel like he supports his crew enough to make up for the issues that the keyword has, and that's durability and hitting power. So one of the problems with the whizbang keyword, and this is something that we've talked about in the past, are that it's a keyword that is designed to work as a bunch of glass cannons that really don't hit that hard, and glass cannons in general can't really take a punch. And basically, a lot of their models are designed so that they're going to make it for basically 2 turns, and then by the end of turn 3, if you haven't basically crippled your opponent's crew, you're going to lose. Most of your models don't see the end of turn 3. And this version of Wong does some things to help that. There is a little bit of healing in the keyword, but the healing comes at a high cost and requires a good bit of setup. You're requiring, generally speaking, master AP to make it happen. Sometimes you're going to have to sacrifice the ability to hit enemy models with your blasts, or to make those blasts less effective, just so that you can get the extra hits on your models. Essentially, the way that his healing works is that after a friendly model that already has fast would gain fast again, it can instead discard a glowy token to heal 2, and it can only be done in that way once per activation. Each model can only be healed that way once per activation. So, for anybody who's not familiar with Wong, you hit your own models. If a model takes damage from another friendly model, it gains fast and a glowy token. So after you've already hit the model and given it fast and a glowy token, you hit it again, discard a glowy token, and heal 2. So it requires a lot of AP. Go ahead.
I was going to say the net result is 2 actions to get a singular glowy token and fast on your model, which is not amazing by any means.
Right. And the heal 2 is great, but they would have taken a minimum of 1 damage the first time you hit them.
Right.
And like you said, they're taking a minimum of 1 damage the second time you hit them. So it's a net gain of 0 on the health in most cases.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry, it's a net gain of 1 because you're healing 2 instead of taking the damage. And then you would have taken 1 damage the first time around. So it's really only a heal 1. And you're losing a glowy token that you just got. So
Which is an important resource, yeah.
Yeah, especially for models like Swinecurse and Alphonse, where you need glowy tokens for suits and you need glowy tokens for infused body.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't feel like this little bit of healing really resolves the other issues that the keyword has. Now he
his
does have another
action is good.
His healing action is good. It is, but it still needs a 5 master AP. It's only an 8-inch range. 1, 2, 3 heal. And then again, the model can discard a glowy token to heal +1. So again, he has some extra healing throughput, but you're pulling more glowy off of your models to get it, which is going to kind of disincentivize you from using his keyword beaters, meaning Alphonse and Swinecurse, because they need their glowy for other things.
Yeah.
The other thing that it has is there's a trigger on it to get a place within 4 inches of the model's current position, which is like cool, but it's not. It doesn't really solve a ton of problems aside from maybe getting him out to be able to scheme or whatever. Like, he's got a lot of cool stuff on his card. His other main action, Switcheroo, is phenomenal, and I won't go through it all right now. But like, that ability is the best thing on his card, in my opinion. And it's kind of the same trap that original Wong fell into, where the best ability on his card was Launch into Space, and the rest of his card was just kind of okay. This card is a little bit better than the original Wong card, and Switcheroo is great, but like, I feel like I'm just playing him for that. So,
I'm also a little disappointed he didn't get a second trigger on his gun. Like the one trigger is really good. Obviously, irreducible damage is phenomenal, but you're not always going to be able to pull that off. So I really wish he had had a different trigger, maybe a cataclysm trigger or something, to give it a second, like,
yeah.
just like
And exactly. And again, to get the trigger off, you have to hit the suit and you need to discard 2 glowy tokens
mhm.
from friendly models within 4 inches of Wong.
Right.
So he's not really he's got a 12-inch range gun. He's not usually going to have a lot of models hanging out around him, like maybe a bow core, maybe a lightning bug, but I mean that's pretty much it. So having to pull 2 glowy tokens to make the attack irreducible on a 2-3-5 damage track, which is not that great.
Yeah.
And like maybe if his moderate had 2 blasts instead of 1, maybe I could see that because
With
that can spread a lot
pyrotechnics,
of
though,
irreducible around.
yeah. Well, no, because it's not. It's only irreducible to the target.
Oh yeah, so never mind. That's
Yeah.
still yeah.
But 2 blasts with pyrotechnics would be maybe a little bit much.
Maybe.
Because the pyrotechnics is the secret sauce to that attack. The irreducible is
Mm-hmm.
good. The pyrotechnics is what makes it amazing. I kind of wish the attack was a 2-4 blast 5 double blast, but I get that that's kind of wild.
Yeah, hitting the severes with all those with the blasts on a moderate 4.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My
that might be
main
kind of
problem
sketch.
my main problem with it is he doesn't do anything to me to make me start looking deeper into his kit. Nothing on that card says bring lightning bugs who never see play. Nothing on that card says I want to bring taxidermists who have fallen out of favor. Like you're you're still basically bringing Alphonse, double Bocor and a Pigapult and a bunch of disposable models, probably digging out a keyword for the rest. Like very little of it makes me want to dig into the keyword. And that's what once some of these titles really like bring out some cool models in the keyword, like it's not in his keyword, but like with Sommer 2, I'm probably always going to bring up a smuggler with him, um, because he produces soul stones, which they can then turn into cards. He, has marker stuff, which smugglers love. He feels like he was built to play smugglers in, and you very rarely saw them before the titles. I don't think Wong makes me look at any other models that aren't being played in the faction and go, yeah, I want to play these guys.
Yeah, and I don't want to harp too much on this, but like one of the other downsides that he has over OG Wong is that his ability to put glowy to put glowy tokens and to hit his own models is significantly lower than original Wong.
Yeah,
Like OG Wong can drop the shockwaves anywhere he wants. He can hit multiples of his own models plus enemies. He's dropping 2 shockwaves every AP. He has the glow, which is his bonus action to just hand out glowy within 6 inches. So this Wong generates a lot less glowy and requires you to use glowy as a resource for the heals on his own models. I just feel like the glowy engine isn't there with this version.
yeah, I agree. I agree.
So enough talking about Wong. Poor Wong. I'll probably play him 5 times and totally change my tune on him. But after
Could
the
be.
one game I had, I was not impressed.
Like I said, I think pyrotechnics is a secret sauce. I've played him a couple times, and being able to reach out around corners and tag models that they think are safe is pretty good.
Cool. Yeah. 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 All right. Moving on from Wong. I'm going to stop being so down on him. Anyway, so, as with some of the other, as with every faction, one of the things that, any faction player is going to be looking at is what do these titles actually do for me? What new stuff do they bring to my kit? When am I going to reach for them and why? That kind of thing. So, what kind of key gaps do you feel like these titles fill within Bayou, Maeve?
Well, we finally got a couple different sources of straight up armor ignore, which we didn't have really before. We had to rely on ping damage a lot of times, or unreliable triggers like on the war pigs to get armor piercing. So to have Ma and the Rockhopper that both ignore armor and resistance triggers is new for Bayou, and I think can potentially like you don't if you know Guild's coming or you know Arco, you think Hoffman is going to show up, you have multiple options besides bringing Kin to sort of ping down Hoffman. You can bring Matu, and Matu seems to be really nice to kind of put some, the brakes on Hoffman a little bit.
Yeah, and to our point about Wong, I mean, just because the irreducible damage I don't think is very efficient, he does bring irreducible damage
Hmm.
to the faction, which is not really something that we've had access to aside from some other stuff in the whizbang keyword, and again, coming at significant cost. But
Yeah.
if you need to bring irreducible to the table, I mean, you can make a whizbang keyword with Wong 2 and Lightning Bugs and Swine Cursed and make it happen. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
you can probably only make it happen for a turn or two, but that might be all you need. So that's a very good point about some of the tech that these new titles and models bring to the faction. There's a couple other things that I would point out in terms of additional tech that we've gotten before we move on to the next segment, and that's going to be we have access to stunned now and staggered that we didn't previously have ready access to. So one of the new models, Beau Fishbacher, is an absolute gem of a model. He can hand out staggered with a bunch of blasts and at decent range. Ophelia can, like I said before, hand out stunned and staggered. And she can be a relatively independent operator that doesn't need a ton of keyword support. So I can theoretically see even hiring her as a second master just to hand out all those debuffs. We also have with Ulix a great way to leverage burning that we just haven't really had before in the faction. Like there's been a little bit of burning here and there, but he can really leverage it. And I can think of some interesting crews that have Ulix 2 along with like Maris or Pear to really really put out a bunch of burning and allow him to leverage it as a resource in addition to just a damage
Yeah.
type.
Well, I mean, we're
Um,
already seeing a couple people talking about bringing Maris to drop a flaming bottle on two models turn
mhm.
one so that you can just shove a piglet through. And you turn a 3 soulstone piglet into a 9 soulstone war pig for the price of burning on your models
Yeah,
that heal up
exactly.
a lot anyway. So the burning one doesn't matter.
Right,
Um,
right. So, besides the different tech that we see brought to the table, the really interesting thing about this whole master title thing is that it allows us a lot more flexibility and a lot more variety when we're actually building lists to bring into a game. So, let's say for instance that you're at a tournament table, it's top table, your opponent's playing, XYZ faction, it doesn't really matter. And you're saying, well, I'm looking at, just for example, uh, Ma. You originally planned on bringing Ma. Now you've got two different versions of Ma that play significantly differently. You've got a decision making process eh, to go through where you have to decide which one of these two titles you want to bring. And there's a little bit of like meta knowledge that goes into it, a little bit of guessing. Um, how do you decide? Maybe specifically for Ma, but also for other masters, how you're going to suss that decision out.
I think this is where it really helps. This will be a boon to some degree to newer players because you can pick up a keyword and you can pick up the model, the master, main master, and the title of that master. And in a lot of cases, specifically looking at like Sommer 1 and Sommer 2, you can play those two masters and split them between multiple pools. And like, this is what Sommer 1 does, this is what Sommer 2 does. and you have those options, like you said, to reach into that kit and pull them in. You also for Ma specifically, like you force your opponent into making a choice with that one, because then they're going to have to say, do I bring the armor reduction and to try to stop Ma 2, or do I bring, or do I, assume you might bring Ma 1, and I don't, I skip that. So if they bring armor reduction and you bring Ma 1, then they've brought tech against you that they didn't necessarily need, and you kind of have a little less restraint on your crew. So I like those little mind games when I go into it, like, what do I think somebody's going to play, like looking at the pool. But I'm one of those people that has like um, an unfortunate amount of like meta knowledge and just game knowledge. Like I know all the models, I know all the stats of the models. Like for someone that doesn't know as much, honestly, you should just be able to look at the pool and go like, which version plays better at this pool? Like, um, you think about Brewmaster, and the one major weakness I've seen in Brewmaster so far is um, terrain. Like severe terrain and terrain generation is really bad. So like you get up there, you declare Brewmaster, your opponent says Euripides, and you're like, this might be rough because now he's going to throw markers in my way. I'm going to have a hard time moving through them. I'm going to have to spend AP getting rid of markers. Um, like I'll just bring Brewmaster 1 instead of Brewmaster 2. And then you can lure people out and do the thing with them. So I really like that versatility of like, picking which master fits the situation better.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot of bob and weave when it comes to master selection. I mean, if trying to suss out exactly which one you're going to take into a pool, especially in top level play, I think is something that's going to take a long time for the community to
Absolutely.
figure out. And quite frankly, I don't even think that there are going to be right answers. Ma being a great example of this. So her keyword is very versatile. They're one that you can kind of build to accomplish, pretty much any pool. And they do have their weaknesses, but one of the really cool things about Ma, especially with the whole Ma 1, Ma 2 thing, is that both versions of that master specifically can accomplish relatively similar things, but they really require very different tech from your opponent to deal with. So if there's a pool that your opponent says, well, Ma 2 is the clear answer in this because there's a bunch of there's a bunch of opportunities for her to like tunnel her models up the board, and I don't have a lot of access to anti armor, so he's probably going to take that. But I'm going to take all of the armor ignoring models that I do have access to try and help out a little bit. Even one or two can really make a difference. And then I, as the Ma player, zig when you expected me to zag, and I go with a Ma 1 crew with 3 bushwhackers, and now all the ranged attacks that you brought to the table don't work. Your armor piercing doesn't do anything, and my crew can still pretty much accomplish what it needs to. So there's definitely some weird mind games there.
Which is great for a crew called Trixie. Like that's
Right.
appropriate. Um, so yeah, I'm excited about that. I think that it's cool, but I also like that as a player who doesn't want to go deep into the faction, you can pick a master that has a title that plays differently, or that allows the keyword to play differently, like Brewmaster 1 and Brewmaster 2, and you can just solo that master, and you don't have to go deep into the faction. For those of us who do go pretty deep into the faction, I can see titles being a little overwhelming at the moment, because suddenly you've just got so much. So, like, giving a little advice for people that are looking at all of this and thinking, "Dear God, what have they done?" Um, take two masters, take two titles you really are interested in, play those, get familiar with them, see if you like them, see if you don't like them. If you don't like them, sub it out for another one. But don't try to learn every title all at once. You're going to be overwhelmed. It's going to be frustrating. It's going to make for bad games because you're back to that square one feeling of like the first time you play this master, sort of, like, and first time you play the keyword sort of thing. I cheated on Bayou this week and had my first Nexus game, and I even played Nexus 1, and my brain was just overloaded. I felt like I was playing Sommer again for the first time. Like, just and that feeling is not great. So when you're trying to do that, and you're also like switching up between the two different masters every once in a while, it can be frustrating. So the best advice is to just take the ones you think are cool, take the ones you think are interesting. It's Malifaux. Rule of cool still works. None. Can't see any of these titles across the board that I look at and go, these are just trash. Like every title, I think is going to be good in its own way and playable in its own way, and Bayou is no exception.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think those are some really well put points, and I do really like your point about dipping your toe into a faction and being able to buy the crew plus the extra master title box and really being able to play. I mean, if you were to do that, you could, between those two versions of the master, you could probably get 20 games total or more in before you've really got a good solid handle on both versions.
And I encourage
Um,
people to do that. Become the
yeah,
Brewmaster guy in your meta. Become the
yeah,
Zoraida guy in your meta. Become the, whatever, whichever master you want to play. Really focus in on them. And at the beginning of third edition, I jumped in really hard on Brewmaster 1, um, and had some great results, like just great results with him. Fun games. And I left it behind by GG1, but like, um, getting to know a key, and then I jumped into Sommer, and that was a whole different level of obsession. But getting to know a keyword really familiar and really intimately, like, it helps you a lot, especially when you step into a tournament setting. And there's going to be a lot of, with these titles come out, there's going to be a lot of masters you're facing that you don't know what's going on anymore. So knowing what your specific master and keyword does is going to become very important again. And playing your game instead of trying to learn your opponent's game at the same time, as you're learning your game. You don't want to get stuck in that situation where you're trying to frantically read your card to figure out what the heck you can do. Um, when Stargazer turns all your guys into constructs, and or you know,
that sounds like my life at every tournament.
yeah,
I don't get enough games in, people. I don't get enough games in. Are there any of these master titles that you feel like are just head and shoulders above the original? You just don't really see yourself playing the originals anymore at all.
um, I think Ulix is probably going to take over Ulix 1 for the most part, unless we see a significant um, unless we see a significant change coming for Ulix 1. I think that Ulix 2 is probably going to be more often seen than Ulix 1 is. It's just more fun to
Cool.
play in general. Um,
Yeah. Go ahead.
and
Sorry.
probably Brewmaster.
Yeah, I mean, I was, again, talking about it on the Brewmaster reveal episodes. I do feel like with this new version of Brewmaster, there probably aren't too many situations that I see myself reaching for Brewmaster 1. He's not bad. I just think that this new version is so much more versatile and frankly more fun to play and probably a little bit more fun to play against as well. I don't know about Ulix. I still feel like Ulix 1 has some significant play, especially the way that that I've kind of come to build his crews. Um, I would say those are probably the only ones that I feel like might really be ahead of their originals. I think by and large, the new masters are probably pretty much neck and neck with the original ones. Aside from maybe Zip, I do struggle to come up with a situation that I might take Zip 2 over Zip 1.
Yeah.
Um,
Like I said, I found the one situation I think he really like. You declare Zip, and then oh shit, they declare Karis. Bring Zip 1 or Zip 2. He removes conditions, which is really good. He removes markers, which is really good, and he can't be taken by Up We Go. Like that's a situation I would be like, okay.
yeah, yeah.
And he could just be a good dodge. He could eventually end up being like, you declare Zip, they declare someone that Zip just can't deal with. Maybe somebody who turns off resistance triggers or eats markers or whatever it is that you don't want them to do. Um, you don't really want to take Zip into Ivan because he brings concealment. So they declare Ivan. You can kind of juke into Zip 2. And it's may not be like as good as just taking another master would have been, but it could give you an advantage that they weren't expecting.
Yeah, yeah, especially for masters, like masters of ours that do have some significant counters. Um, a big one for me would probably be Kirai, just because I have played the Zip 1 versus Kirai match several times, and it sucks. Zip just really, really, really struggles. I do feel like that's a situation when you do reach for Zip 2, but I'm not reaching him for him because I feel like he's better for the scheme pool. I'm reaching for him because my opponent declared a master that I know is a strong counter to Zip, which there is something to be said for that. I mean, let's be real. Um, with the Ivan example, I would say that this version of Zip, I I'm gonna disagree with you a little bit. I actually feel like Zip 1 is probably one of the best counters that Bayou has against Ivan. This is something I've talked about elsewhere. Um, in my experience, bringing concealment to the table doesn't matter because you're always going to have concealment when Ivan's shooting at you because
That
of all the
makes sense.
shadow
Yeah.
markers and summons he's shooting past. And Zip 1 can actually kidnap Ivan and pull him away from his protective shadow markers very easily.
Right.
And then he's extremely vulnerable. So that's my 2 cents on that. I don't necessarily know that I'm right, but after a lot of games with Ivan, I feel like,
Well,
yeah,
technically, Zip 2 can also do that with full speed ahead. It's a 5-inch push, ignores terrain and marker or ignore terrain and models.
it's true. And it does ignore concealment, so that does help out quite a bit. So yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. I didn't realize that it ignored concealment.
It's a neat ability, and his bonus abilities. The Zip 2 bonus ability is maybe one of the best bonuses in the game. Like it's pretty nuts.
So wait,
Um,
you're telling me that Bayou got another best bonus ability in the game, along
they
with
might
Open the
have.
Gourd from Brewmaster 2?
Yeah, they might have.
Yeah. No, it is. It's very good. It's probably the best ability on his card.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, we already talked about some of the challenges that titles bring to the game, like the extra difficulties with building crews, trying to guess which version of the masters your opponent's going to take. I would say I am a little concerned about what that's going to mean at the tournament scene. And I I feel like for those folks that, like, to your point, play the faction like me, I play the faction.
Hmm.
Um, it is going to take a long, long, long time to get a handle on how all these masters actually fit and which ones we like and which ones we don't. I, I feel like the top table stuff is really where it's going to get a little bit wacky. Like at levels of play beyond where I am. Like I am
Yeah,
a,
for
a
sure.
solidly mid tier, maybe high mid tier player. I
Hmm.
am by no means a top level player. I simply just don't get enough games in to fit that slot anymore. I feel like when you get to truly top table games, especially because list building can be such a critical component of very, very high level play, it is going to cause some wackiness there, and I don't know that it's going to cause any feel bads, but it's going to make those top table games a real slog, especially at the end of like a 4 or a 5 round event when people are exhausted.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be interesting. I think the first 6 months of titles in general are just going to cause a few feel bads because there's just going to be things that happen that you're just like, what? Like, I was playing Josh from the DC area this past week. I was playing Ulix 2, and he played McMorning 2. And he got Trail of Slime onto a Rogue Necromancy, dropped it into a forest that I had 2 models at low health in, and I was like, as soon as they activate it, they die. And I have no way to stop that. Like, this is really awful because Trail of Slime makes it hazardous and poison 1 the whole forest. Kind of like, I think it's also on the Grave Goo, maybe? Um, and I didn't even realize that was on the upgrade. And then, like, he had a Kentari that had 2 upgrades on it. I sent Ulix 2 in it thinking there's absolutely no way Ulix with all these positive flips and everything is not just going to crush this guy. And he's like, I discard it to reduce it by 2. And I'm like, So it lived with like 2 hit points. Activated, it had Grave Touches with, or the Grave Touch. Healed back up to, moved. It had 13 poison on it. At the end of the turn, it was back up to full. And I'm just like, this is not fun. Like, I'm not
Yeah,
having fun at all in
yeah,
this game.
yeah.
Uh, you know,
Especially because I mean, the nightmare situation is you finish up a big event, a big 3 round with high attendance, or you go to a con or something like that, and you get to the last round, the round 4, round 5. And this is kind of just harping back on my previous point. The nightmare situation is that you're at a highly competitive event like that. You know that the top table is going to have a very strong opponent on the other side of it. You don't want to go into a situation like that playing against a master that you've never played against. And
yeah,
now all of a sudden, half the masters in the game you've
right.
potentially never played against.
There's 50
So
plus options.
right. It's going to make things get a little wacky. That's all I've got to say on that. I've kind of belabored the point long enough. We've kind of finished most of the stuff on Bayou. I am kind of curious, just quickly, are there any master titles from other factions that you're actually excited to play against, and any that you really think would be really cool?
Um, I There's some I'm both excited and sort of trepidatious to play against. Like Dora 2 looks like she'd be really fun to play. It looks like a nightmare to play against. Um, the little exploit with Wicked Dolls giving her adversary to whatever your keyword is, so that you're always on negatives to shoot her,
Yeah, so
feels gross.
funny story. You don't even have to pick a keyword. I don't know if you know that. You can just do adversary enemy
Enemy,
because
yeah,
that's already in the game.
yeah, and
So it's not even locked to a keyword.
I hate that, but I've also examined it long enough to realize that if you, and now it depends on if you can have second masters or not, but if you second master in Zoraida or bring an obey model, Luck Thief doesn't work against obeys, so you can obey her friendly models to punch her in the face, and that's the thing that happens. But I think she's really cool. I think the Levy 4 horseman list is just going to be interesting. I think it's pretty easy to tech against, and I think if you don't tech against it, you're gonna really, really hate it. But I think it should be a fun list to play against. Like, just it's dynamic, right? Having like 5 models in the crew is pretty cool. So, what
Yeah,
about
for
you?
sure.
Is there anything that you're really excited about?
You know, it's kind of it seems like a strange one because the crew is sort of known to be one that it can cause some feel bads. Um, but I'll be honest, I really want to play against Huggy, the new master.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, Jacob Lynch Dark Bet. It just I really like his card. I've always liked Hunkering Darkness. I love the aesthetic of the keyword. And I just feel like this new version of Lynch just brings a lot of really cool stuff to the game, and I think it'll be fun to play against.
There's definitely models I'm looking forward to painting. I do some commission work for several people in the community that just are not interested in painting. The new Yan Lo model just looks stupendous. Um,
Yeah.
the new Euripides model looks great. I can't wait to just gore that thing all the way up. It's gonna be amazing. Um,
Yeah. Speaking of models that I'm not looking forward to playing against, Euripides 2 looks like a whole ball of bad.
a
I do not know
beast,
how to deal with that
a beast.
models rules.
I'm not looking forward to playing against Terra 2. The Terra 33 kidnap strategy right now is a little busted.
Yeah. 30 I think 33 is kind of bad for the game.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to harp on that
Well,
too much.
I think he's okay until you add rewind.
Yeah,
Once you add
exactly.
rewind and he can just bounce back to safety, no problem. That's rough.
He can do some pretty janky stuff with what do you call it? His other keyword there, Marshall.
Marshall,
So,
yeah. Oh,
so yeah.
Lady J2 is really good as well, but Bayou has some nice marker tech. Like the rest of the
Mm-hmm.
factions are catching up with Bayou in terms of marker tech, so it is what it is. But yeah, I think we got plenty. Like Lady J does not want to see gluttony on the table. Uh,
Mm.
you know, have fun with that. So
Yeah, for sure. So just real quickly, because we're running a little bit long at this point, but I do want to touch on the jockeys. So Bayou, we got our starter box. The models are phenomenal. Like they're so well made, so much detail. They look super fun on the table, and quite frankly, they've got some pretty cool rules too. Um, you were talking before about Bo Peep. I kid you not. Since I got that, same thing as you. Since I got that box in, I have played Bo Peep in every single one of my games, and she has not disappointed.
she's so good. She's so good.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, like the oh man, she's so good. Where
yeah,
do I even
the
begin?
the pulse push, the heal at the end of the activation. Um, yeah, I mean she's just fantastic. Her place attack that she gets built in on a charge, really good. Just really good.
Yeah, I mean, like, so there's so many things that she just does for Bayou that they haven't had. So she has an 8-inch aura where after a friendly model ends their activation within range, they heal 1 for each other model damage during their activation, max 2. So healing is something that Bayou have sort of struggled with. We've had Bokors for a long time, but the Bokors are fairly card intensive, and they can only heal during their activation, of course. We have lightning bugs, which they need like an 8 to get the heal off, which is terrible. So nobody ever uses them for that. And then we do have spit hogs, which I feel like have really been underutilized as out of keyword models. I do think they're very strong. Um, and I think we're probably going to end up seeing more of those, especially because we're seeing a lot of models that are going to have good synergy. Lures are a thing, and I feel like their lure is kind of underutilized. But Bo Peep being able to potentially heal 2 outside of activation with no AP investment, just sort of passively, is so strong. It's so strong. And she's got an ability where she can push any friendly models within a 3-inch pulse, including herself, 3 inches in any direction. So that really helps with unpacks, or just getting crews up the board. I mean, I've used it in Ophelia to get the whole crew up the board, before they even start really doing anything. And she also has a really cute movement trick with that hogwash slosh trigger on her melee. So, like, she's a 40 mil model with a 2-inch engage. She can move through friendlies. So, you can really slingshot a model up the table on turn 1 because you can start the turn with Bo Peep, races on to move everything up 3 inches. She's a jockey, so she gets an extra 2 inches on top of that, so she can move through your models, and then she can charge forward, hit one of your models on the backside of her engagement range, get a built-in suit to put it on the opposite side of her engagement range, so she's moving it like, 6 inches ish from the attack, plus another 3 inches from the races on. So I mean, she can get something 9-10 inches up the board the very start of the turn.
Yeah, absolutely.
So huge. Yeah, I mean, she's just like the total package. She kind of does everything.
What I really like about her is, and what I think, like the second level play I've seen with her is Stampede is huge on a 6-move model and a 2-inch melee range. You can charge through it, and engage models all around. And then she has a 2-inch engage that could be like holding down 3 models. And that's big. Her damage track is not huge, but I don't think that's what she's there for. She's really there to just like lock being able to lock that stuff in place and just wait for your models to come to it.
Yeah, I mean, she can do janky stuff in Whizbang, where, to your point, she can charge through your model, end in base contact with it, stampede on your model to give it fast and glowy, and then use the attack action to target another enemy model within that big 2-inch engage range. I've used her in Ma. Oh my gosh, in Ma, she's so filthy because you have pit traps all over the place, and then you're using the Hogwash Slosh trigger to put enemy models in the middle of pit traps while engaged inside severe hazardous terrain. Really, really, really cool stuff. I can see using her in Brewmaster for all the passive healing and dropping stuff inside those hazardous terrain bubbles that Brew 2 puts out. Yeah, I mean, so good. So the next one that we have to talk about is Stumpy, which is probably the only one that I'm not super high on. Stumpy has some cool tech, but certainly isn't a model that I would consider taking into any crew. But what have you thought of? Is there any kind of janky stuff that you can come up with?
I think with Zoraida and the Kurgan and just utilizing all of it, the severe and severe terrain stuff, I think he could be pretty okay. I think he's a defense 6 model is nothing to sneer at. Planted Roots is really good, and it's something that we don't have access to a lot. So in a Zoraida crew, you can bring Bad Juju and you can bring Stumpy for Planted Roots, and have models that can't be moved. And the Timber Trigger is pretty good if as long as you have access to being, and you've got severe terrain, so you should be able to get it off. So in a Swamp Fiends crew, I could see bringing it if you want to have like a hold the middle game instead of a reach out and scheme game.
So next one we have is another personal favorite of mine, and that's Ruffles. Ruffles has done some magic for me. So one of the cool things that I like about Ruffles, well, there's a couple of cool things. So one of them is that it gives access to pass token generation. Now, it is somewhat limited in that you can only take his trigger on the attack to gain a pass token when targeting an enemy, and Ruffles is pretty fragile. It's basically just 7 wounds, defense 4 willpower, or defense 5 willpower 4, and that's more or less it. But the other really cool thing is it brings... So you know that ability that everybody seems to hate when they play against it, Scatter? You've played against Scatter, right? Where it, takes an AP, can deny points, great on stuff like Fuhatsu, but takes an AP. So Ruffles has better Scatter. Again, doesn't require a flip. It's a 3-inch pulse. Ruffles takes a damage, and then push models, not just enemy models, but push models within range up to 2 inches in any direction. So you're not just pushing away, you're pushing in any direction, and it can be your models as well as enemy models. I have denied quite a few points in ley lines using this ability. And again, big synergy with Ma because you're doing unresisted pushes to knock enemies around and pit traps, and there's a lot of other situations like that it's quite strong in.
With Stampede, he's
So,
got some unresisted damage, and with Crazed
mhm.
Chicken, he's got some unresisted pushes. Anytime your opponent doesn't have to flip, it's good news for you.
Yep, definitely. And you know, on the surface, you look at this model and you think to yourself, I mean, it's not that great. It's only 7 wounds. It's got crappy defense stats. It doesn't have reckless, but I've found that it's actually one of the better mobile schemer and scheme deniers that we've got. I mean, it's move 7. It can move through models. It has all the other jockey stuff like trample and stamp or like stampede and ramming speed. So it does have a little versatility if it gets into combat. But between move 7 being able to move through models and having crazed chicken and rampage on its attack, like you can get this model pretty far. One thing to remember is that with Rampage, you can declare that on friendlies. So if you need to really get ruffles across the table and it's carrying like a ley lines marker, for instance, you can charge one of your models, hit it for 2, and like who cares? You hit your model for 2. You get a built-in Rampage trigger to push another 5 inches through it, and then you get to walk again another 7 inches. Like you're gonna get pretty much anywhere you need
Mhm.
to go. It's not quite the same as a third AP, but it ain't far off.
Well, if you hit a Bokor and you give a Bokor fast from that, like that's not nothing.
Yeah, yeah, for
Because
sure.
then the Bokor is going to go and heal it up. So, the other thing I will say is, I mean, you know how much I love the test subjects,
Yeah,
and Crazed Chicken gives them pushes without
it's
flips.
true.
So if he is within 2 inches or 3 inches of 2 test subjects, that is 2 charges generated off of one bonus action.
Yes, pretty cool
And you
stuff.
can control the order with which it works. So if your test subjects are engaged, you can push the enemy models out and then and then charge the test subjects because they will be out of engagement again. So
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Yes, and that brings us to the last model on our list tonight, and that's Fluffernutter. So I know you've used Fluffernutter a little bit. What's your experience been? I haven't actually tried this model out yet.
He does a great job at you know how you were talking about Wong 2 and not having as much glowy generation. Well, he has a bonus action that just does 1 damage to everyone within 3. So he's bringing um, that glowy generation that you don't have. Plus, his magic act trigger: choose a marker within 2 inches of the target. Place the chosen marker anywhere within 2 inches of the target. Markers than one of the place marker suffer 1 damage. So he's got a shotgun. He can shoot something for 1, like Alphonse, who can take it. Um, do that, get that trigger, move a marker, like a scheme marker or something, plop it down in the crew, more glowy, and then he bonus actions and another glowy. Then you just have a Bokor go and heal it all up and call it a day. And you can play him back behind the crew, and then on his last AP, walk up through the crew because he doesn't care that they're all in front of him. So that's my take on him.
Yeah, and again, one of the things that I'm always looking at with, especially with Bayou, just because we've got so much weird, janky stuff, is what kind of stuff can you do with targeting friendly models? And Fluffernutter has some really cool stuff on his attacks that you will benefit from attacking friendly models with. So like his broken down rifle, the magic act trigger, he's only stat 5 on it. The nice thing about this is that it's a min damage 1, and if you happen to have basically any low mask in your hand, you can use that magic act trigger, hit your friendly model probably for 1 damage because you're going to be relenting. And then again, we're talking Mawtucket, picking up a pit trap that's within 2 inches of that friendly. Frequently, Ma will drop them behind her to like block lanes, or if you need to move one of those out of a lane that's been blocked. So you can pick it up, put it in a more advantageous position, and literally place it underneath another enemy model. And then you're doing a 1-inch pulse off of that 50 millimeter marker for 1 damage, plus you're dealing hazardous damage when it lands, if I remember correctly, the way that rule works. So, like, there's a lot of damage potential there that's not really resistible, and it can put your opponent in a really bad position.
Yeah, I like him a lot. He's really interesting. And like all of these models, they're balanced by the fact that they are very easy to kill. So you do need to be, conscious of how you're using them and how you position them to make sure that they don't die. But they're all cool. They're all really cool, really interesting. Every single one of these models, except maybe Stumpy, I can see myself using pretty regularly, which is great to come out of a starter box. And also, I could see like opening up the starter box and playing it against somebody else's starter box and having a great game.
Yeah,
And
I
then
would say so.
it encompasses the sheer like weird, goofy shenanigans that are Bayou, like in good models.
So here's the big question, and this will be the last one I've got for the night. Are there any crews that you would consider hiring all 4 jockeys in?
I think you could do it in Ma 1.
I think so. That was my first inclination. Yep.
She doesn't really need other Trixie models to do what she does. And she can push them, she can give them shielded, she can do all the little tricks, plus she can keep up with them, which is pretty
Mm-hmm.
good. I think Zip might also be another one who could keep up with them pretty well.
I gotta get out my app here and see what this crew would look like. But if it'll fit, so Maeve and I just did an impromptu experiment to try and figure out what the goofiest crew we could come up with that has all 4 of these jockeys in is. And I'll go first. I went with Matuk at 1 with 12 cups of coffee, all 4 jockeys, and 3 bushwhackers with a 5 stone cache.
Oh, okay. Mine is Ma 1 as well, with no upgrades. All 4 of the jockeys, 2 slop haulers, and a rooster rider. And I got the slop haulers because they're all beasts. So the slop haulers can tag along with them and keep up with
See,
them.
That's thinking right there.
And throw adversary beast out. So.
So the thought process with this crew for me is that Ma Tucket with 12 cups is kind of the cherry on top, just because having a anchor model right in the middle with all these different 2-inch engages and all the pit traps that we're going to have down and denying bonus actions at the same time would be pretty frustrating. But so Ma Tucket and all 3 bushwhackers all make pit traps, and every single one of the jockeys has some interaction with those pit traps. So basically, it's going all in on the pit traps.
Absolutely.
So Bo Peep can pick up enemies and drop them inside pit traps. Stumpy can treat all of those pit traps as terrain pieces for all the stuff on her card that utilizes severe terrain. So like the trigger on toss in the mud to give out staggered on top of being inside severe. The timber trigger on her axe gives out slow to anything within 1 inch of blocking and or severe terrain. So lots of interactions there. Ruffles can do the unresisted pushes with Crazed Chicken to knock enemies around inside the terrain. And then Fluffernutter, of course, has Carrot Cake Quake to deal more unresisted damage, and it has the Magic Act trigger on the gun so that I can pick up those pit traps and drop them underneath enemy models. So there you go. That's my thought. I think I might actually have to try this crew. Of course, none of my jockeys will actually be able to get through the wall of pit traps that I drop, but I'll deal with that problem when I get to it.
Yeah, I kind of like mine because, like I said, the slop haulers can haul around with them. They can hand out adversary beasts, which all 4 of the jockeys are beasts. So you get that benefit. They have a little bit of healing. Obviously, they're not pigs, so they're only going to heal one. But you can also get the chance to summon piglets, who will then go off and run schemes for you. So
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Your crew's probably better than mine. But yeah, there you go. So that'll pretty much wrap us up for tonight. Did you have any closing thoughts for the people out there, Maeve?
just kind of reiterating what I said. If you're feeling overwhelmed with all of these titles, um, number one, you're by no means obligated to play them all. Don't think that because they exist you have to buy all of the stuff. Take your time, enjoy the new stuff, enjoy what you like playing. Um, Proxy it before you even buy it. Just go talk to your local people. I'm sure there will be tons of people proxying. I imagine we'll probably have tournaments proxying models until we get all these models out. Try them, see what you like. If you don't really like it, if it doesn't click with you, no shame in tossing it aside and grabbing the next model and going for it. Um, this is it's very easy in a game that already has a lot of choices to hit into analysis paralysis. So don't overburden yourself with, decisions you don't necessarily have to make.
Yeah, and to kind of build on your point about the analysis paralysis thing and trying to figure out what versions of the master to go with. That's one thing that I don't really think has been brought up anywhere that I've seen, but the addition of all these master titles to the game will affect the game, the competitive and the casual landscapes, both whether you actually own that second master title or not. So if you go to a tournament table and you declare Ma Tucket, for example, because we've been talking about her a lot, your opponent doesn't know if you own the other Ma Tucket or if you have an appropriate proxy for the Ma Tucket. So they're having to do all these head games to try and figure out how they're going to counter two of them. Meanwhile, you've only got one version. You know what you have. Your list building is simple. Like, you don't need to stress about it. So these models are going to affect the state of the game regardless of whether or not you actually own them, which I do think is kind of neat. It does take a little bit of pressure off you and sort of allows you, if you choose to do so, to just, enjoy the game the way that you have been. Kind of take a more, passive angle on learning some of these new masters and just roll with it. So pick them up,
Also, don't
enjoy
get
them.
frustrated when you get your butt kicked by new titles a couple times. It's gonna happen. Try to find that way to step out of the game a little bit, and there will be large levels of tilt, I think, because this is the biggest update to the game we've had since third edition hit. So there's going to be some tilt. There's going to be some hard feelings. Take your time to just take a breath, think about it, realize that everybody's back to learning, everybody's back to square one, and you know you'll get through it. You'll figure it out.
And don't be like me. Don't play one game of Wong 1 and then decide that you don't like him. Give yourself a couple of games with these new masters. Give them a fair shake.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's what I did with
Yeah.
Zip. I played 3 games with Zip, and I was like, I am not liking this at all. But I'm gonna try to write a blog about him, so I really need to know. So I was like, I played the next game, and I was like, if he doesn't work in this game, then I don't want to have anything else to do with him. And I dropped him in, and I was like, hey, it worked. This has actually worked. So then I had to go in and be like, how can I leverage those strengths that I found in this game to other games?
There you go. That's the way to look at it. So in that case, I will bid you adieu, Maeve. As always, everybody keep listening, keep flipping cards, stay positive. As always, stay weird, folks.